Who do you look up to? There'd be a woman or a male broadcaster, but let's say the woman that's in the business you are. There's someone that you really admire and just really have a lot of appreciation and respect for?
Andrea Kramer is one of them because, again, going back to the age, there is a shelf life for women in this business. Now, you're able to stay on the shelf depending on what your value is. In other words, if you continue getting scoops and you break stories and you build relationships, I look at Leslie Stahl at 60 Minutes, you stand the test of time. Mm-hmm. But I also don't want to be that person where my life is defined by what I do. And for a long time, I think when you literally have to really lean into this job, everything you do is about your job. Mm-hmm. Like recently I had somebody asking me about like my hobbies and am I traveled, and I'm like, man, I've been so one track for so long. And I feel like it's a kindred spirit probably for a lot of football players. Mm-hmm. You've been at it for so long. It's like you kind of get done. You're like, is my identity always that I played for the Cowboys, the Falcons, go down the list? What do I do next? And at some point, am I getting too old to go explore those things? And so I think it's, you sort of just ask yourself, like, what do you want to look back on? And do I always want to be so one track?
Yeah, it's interesting because I know in my sport or as an athlete, the transition phase. What are you going to do once you're done leaving, when you left the game? And it's almost like you want to move on. You want to be a billionaire like, Mark Cuban. Who doesn't? You want to start your own business. But you were in that life so long, and as a player, you really didn't have that life skill of being business entrepreneur. But to answer your point, it's hard to not just come back where you were because your identity, and certainly if you played or had success with like the Cowboys franchise, you're attached to that. So I finally told myself, I'm not going to run from that. I'm going to embrace it. Kind of like, yourself and what you're doing. You've been in broadcasting a while. You're a young 40. But to me, I think you can do that for a long time just because of who you are. And there's so many other opportunities for you the tentacles, reach out to a lot of different things.
I mean, it's good advice. I mean, to your point, it's like there's a lot of equity in what I've done the last couple of years. But I also look at 30, I completely pivoted out of news and made the switch to sports. I think I'm always like sort of looking for like the next challenge. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I don't know what that challenge is going to be or what that looks like. I just know I need to be passionate about mm-hmm. whatever I'm doing. Every time I talk, to a young journalist, I always tell them, because you do kind of have to have a stomach for this. It is a really hard job to get. It's a really hard job to keep. And there's always somebody else that wants your job. Again, no different than a football mm-hmm. player, right? Yeah. And so I always tell them, like, what's your why? And so my why is I love being an advocate for people. I love telling their stories. Like, it's almost like I like being their hype people a little bit. And so I've got to make sure I'm still passionate about whatever I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been led by passion. I didn't even start making money in this business until about 5 years ago. My first market, I made $630 every 2 weeks. I was in sales because I couldn't get a job. I was so bad my first year. Then I was making $5,000 a month in sales. And then I went from that to $1,230 a month. But I just never chased the money. I always chased the passion. And I think if you chase the passion,
everything else will come along with
everything falls into place.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we'll lead with that again.
That's really good advice. All right, so every week we do a couple of segments, and the segment I really like to talk to our guest about, and that being Jane Slater today, X's and O's. All right, Jane. Every week I ask my guests a little bit more personal life, and I want you to be as candid as possible. Step in my office. First of all, if you had a choice to go to dinner with 4 people, dead or alive, and I know it's a tough question, but what's 4 comes to the top of your mind?
So I'm a huge fan of the show Victoria. I don't know if anyone's
mm-hmm.
watched on BBC, and I thought Albert was the most fascinating historical character that I'd sort of been introduced to. I wasn't even really that familiar with him, but he brought the locomotive. Mm-hmm. He brought the toilets. In fact, in Dallas, we have this big glass convention center that's like sort of ugly and ridiculous looking. Albert had one in London as part of the convention. He wanted to bring all these minds from around the world to London, and that is like an homage to it. It looks just like it.
Right.
So and the way he supported his wife, Victoria, who, these gender roles reversed back then, and how emasculating that might have been. And, she was pregnant half the time, so he's kind of like quasi king. I would love to sit down with him. So I would say he'd be number one. I think Oprah's fascinating. I know that's so cliche, but
who wouldn't want to have sitting there?
But I just think, the things she went through growing up as a child and then working in local news and, the way she's pivoted, but also the way she has believed in so many people, invested in them, and then helped them spark their greatness and their businesses. So I would be fascinated with Oprah. I love George W. Bush. Yeah. I think he would bring a levity to the dinner table.
It's my favorite president.
Again, this isn't like Republican or Democrat.
Well, no, mine's not Republican.
Yeah, look, I'm not. And these days, it's like, God, we're like in the closet. We can't talk politics. But I just find
hell
him.
With that. We can't.
What I loved about him was he was always bridging the aisle. I was at the University of Texas when his daughter Jenna was there, so I knew her a little bit, and there was just the way he led. This country after September 11th. People can say whatever they want. I remember that very vividly. People wanted to go to war. We had been attacked. And just the way that he stood at the baseball game. And I always believed that he was a compassionate conservative, But it's every time you see the guy at like the SMU games or whatnot, it's just, he's got the little chuckle and the laugh. Like, he's like the guy you'd want. He's like the guy you'd want to be your dad. Like, he's awesome.
Let me tell you a real quick story about George W. Bush. I was playing at golf at this really nice golf course, and it was OU Texas weekend, and I'm going to the golf course, and I show up, I get in my cart, and I'm going to go to the putting green and do some putting. And I see this guy with his hat on, and like on those like floppy hats. And he said, "Hey," he goes, "what are you doing here?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just here playing golf with the buddies of mine. We got a little match going." He goes, "Oh, really?" He goes, I get closer I get, it was President Bush. And I couldn't even talk, Jane. I'm like, "Mr. President Bush." He goes, "Yeah, how you doing?" I mean, he was so down to earth.
So approachable.
Yeah. And so I just, at that point, I was like, man, this is so cool.
I just think that would be the most fascinating dinner. And then I would say for my fourth one, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's harder than you think it is, because there's a lot of people.
Martha Stewart.
Oh, nice. With Snoop Dogg or no Snoop Dogg?
No Snoop Dogg. What I love about her is that this beauty queen went to prison.
Yeah.
And at 80, she still seems incredibly relevant. And I met Snoop Dogg. It's kind of a running joke with Rossini and I, because every time we go to Super Bowl, we run into Snoop. And one night we had the opportunity of like hanging out with him. We have like these awesome videos. And, I was like, "Yo, Snoop, like, I just want to talk about like your son, like UCLA." And he's like showing me like his children's modeling pictures. And like, he was like the homie that night. And so just imagining Martha Stewart being the homie with Snoop Dogg. And I recently read that they still stay in touch. She's got to be a cool chick. Right? Like, Snoop Dogg's not like just he's not friends with some basic white chick that's not cool. Exactly. And so I'm like, there's like a lot of nuances to Martha. And like, I just feel like there's a lot of layers there.
I saw her getting, she was at a roast. And boy, I think I don't know if she was getting roasted or she was there part of it. And I'll tell you what, she's pretty witty. I mean, because they were killing her. But when she got up there, I mean, she's pretty impressive. Dating advice. What advice do you give people that, oh, by the way, do you have anyone that's in your life right now or something you don't want to talk about? But what advice do you give people for young, old, and relationships? Keep that stuff going.
My advice is not to listen to me because at 40, I'm still single. It's kind of funny. Again, 40, it's like I'm having like a mini midlife crisis. You mentioned
that. Would you quit saying that?
I know. Like, welcome to my TED Talk. I feel like
no one even knows how old you are until you mention it.
Well, I feel like this is very cathartic. And I walked in here and it's, what is it, a psychology center or a counseling center?
Yeah, you like
counseling.
That?
Yeah, so maybe
that's where you got to go after this podcast.
Maybe I'm feeling
talking to me.
Yeah, maybe I'm feeling the need to like just like divulge and unleash here, Tony. But
yeah, there's been a lot of healing in this room from the previous occupants.
Amen.
I would say this is going to sound ridiculous, but I think for the longest time, I was just so career focused and career minded that any guy I dated had to fit into that. In other words, can he move if I get a job? And, is he okay with like a strong woman who wants to work and the job is important and they've got to be like the star in the relationship? Because I was married for 1 year and he was also a reporter. And so 2 sports reporters in a relationship, not a match. But I don't think I ever took the time when I was dating to like ask people the hard questions. Like, how do you view money? How do you save money? Like, what does happiness look like to you? Why? What is success to you? The questions you should be asking, but people typically don't. And so you sort of like, I just feel like you start dating and you hang out and it's like, it's initial attraction, or they feel like somebody that your friends or your family will be impressed by, or, the chemistry's, there. I think you lead with all those things. And I think you forget that if you're really going to be in it and you make it stick, you've got to do all these other things. There's actually this book called 8 Dates, and you go on 8 dates and it makes you have some of these uncomfortable conversations. And so I have found recently, I've just been completely transparent with guys. Like, I did not have the best credit score for the longest time. I'm terrible with money. I can make it. I need you to help me manage it. I don't cook. So if that's okay with you, great. What are my strengths? I am super clean, like hospital corners. There's never a dish in the sink. Just going down the list. And so, like, now that I've had these more, like,
It doesn't sound like too many. You don't have that many flaws.
Well, when you're having these more transparent, vulnerable conversations, you're like, you sort of are giving people a disclaimer to sort of get out early before you sort of feel invested and obligated. And I'm finally attracting really good guys in my life. So to answer your question, I'm a free agent, but I'm talking to 2 teams.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I think that you should let people know, you should know your characteristics and everything and not find out about it when you're like a year into it.
Know thyself.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's interesting. How about app dating?
Don't do it.
Don't do it. I always think about when I was back in the day when there was no cell phones and the app dating and everything. What would that be like? But I hear some good stories and some horror stories.
The problem with app dating is
it's like The Bachelorette, watching that show. I don't know if you're a big fan of that, but
I don't watch it
because
because
kind of reminds me of that.
Because I actually am a hopeless romantic, and so like I just feel like it cheapens like what people are trying to do. A lot of these guys go on there and they're provocative to be a celebrity, right? And a lot of people have made a lot of money. I know a lot of these Dallas is literally the casting city for them. So I've known a lot of them over the years.
What's that tell you?
Well, it tells you why I'm still single.
Well, no, they're not. They're
ridiculous.
probably not in a relationship either, right?
Oh,
and they're on there.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. Where are we going with that? I got lost there.
We're just talking about I don't know, Bachelorette and the advice.
Dating apps. Dating apps.
Yeah.
God, ADD squirrel. I don't do it because typically you have to like list your job, right?
Yeah, that'd be kind of hard.
And so, not that I think I'm a big deal or that it's a big deal to guys. But you'll go out with some of these guys and I feel like they're like trying to get the rose. So you'll take them to a Super Bowl or you'll get them sweet seats, which is weird, right?
But guys do stuff like that.
It's kind of weird. And then they want to do is talk sports with you. So typically the guys that I date, they are like in tech or maybe that's the other problem too. I mean,
engineers.
They're just like, but they're like kind of out there. Like they're like big thinkers and, they literally don't care what I do for a living.
So
they say you marry your dad. My dad doesn't care what I do for a living, but I typically date guys that don't really like sports, but I also.
Because you don't want to talk about work. That's
I mean, if you work for a software company or you are a lawyer, do you want me to come home and hound you every day? Like, okay, I need to know about the case. Tell me about the deposition.
No, that would.
Like, what was it about the deposition that stood out for you? Like,
you just want to walk in the door and get away from all that.
Yeah. And I also am just like, what if they screenshot my conversations? That's kind of weird, and you're trying to be vulnerable with them. But I also I just feel like I know a lot of people in different cities because I am very social. And if I can't reference you with somebody that I know, then we're probably A, not a good match, but B, I'm a reporter. I'm like Nancy Drew. I need to do some digging on you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the app thing just isn't for me. And just this idea of going out during the week and it feels like you're kind of in this rat race and I talk for a living and then you go on a date and it's like an interview. It just
doesn't sound too appealing. Beaches or mountains?
Beaches.
You a beach girl?
Love the beach. I started, NFL Network's in Culver. So every year I get to I basically couch surf. I'm America's favorite house guest from June to mid-August. But I took up surfing about 3 years ago.
Huntington Beach down in California?
Venice. I'm I love the gritty. Everyone thinks I like Manhattan. I'm it's so homogenous down there. I love, maybe it's the Austin in me, but I love the beatnik and the homeless guys accosting you and throw up on the ground. I just love the character of Venice Beach. But I took up surfing. And when I say take up surfing, I mean, float on my board, get gnarly injuries every single time, get yelled at by the first line of surfers because I think that I can surf. But there is just something about your feet dangling in the water. I love it.
Just watch the sharks.
Yes. Well, I mean, my life has kind of been a clown show anyways. It would be very appropriate that would be how I go.
Yeah. Sushi or steak?
Tough one. I'm not a foodie.
So at least you're not a vegan.
I'm not this foodie. Yeah, I'm not a vegan, but I'm not this foodie.
Do you like sushi?
I do. I like sushi, and I do like steak to an extent.
Yeah.
I'd have to go sushi, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's I kind of thought you would do that. But I mean, I thought maybe also some people's well, I'm a vegan. And I'm okay, well, that's not fair.
Well, I feel you kind of my sister's a vegan. I'm don't you run out of food to eat? I need a little bit more variety.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, the other segment we do on my show every week, it's called Binge Worthy. We've all been doing, I don't know if you've had time, but I wrote down 20 shows I've watched since COVID. So do you have any recommendations for any binge? You mentioned Victoria. Have you watched The Crown?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hate the fourth season.
Oh.
It's terrible. Big fan of Gillian Anderson. Watched X-Files. I'm a massive sci-fi geek. Massive. The weirder, the better. But she is so forced as Margaret Thatcher. I mean, I'm such a history nerd, too.
Is that who that is?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Oh, it's every time I turn
she's
it
Margaret
on,
Thatcher?
Yes. It's the most forced.
Oh, my gosh.
And I think I gave this, this was my hot take, on Twitter. And people came for me. And have you watched the fourth season?
No, I haven't watched the fourth season yet.
I look forward to discussing this with you.
Yeah.
It is so forced. And then the girl that plays Princess Diana.
Yeah.
Yes, she looks like her. But it's over dramatization. It's
Man,
just
Prince
it's killing
Andrew,
it for me.
Man, I mean, come on, dude.
I just didn't love
that whole range of marriage and everything. I don't know how much truth there is to the whole thing, but I mean, it's pretty interesting, that whole dynamic.
I mean, I love the fact that Charles was just so committed to Camilla and they found each other.
I met Charles.
Right.
Yeah,
and that they found each other after all these years. But he would have been tough to be married to.
Yeah.
But she didn't seem that easy to be married to either. Just felt like two very insecure people.
Yeah. What other ones? Any other?
Oh my gosh, I have a list. This show is fun.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about things I love to talk
this
about.
Stuff, yeah,
I'm gonna take notes from you and start applying this to my podcast.
How about Undoing? Have you seen that with?
So
HBO?
I'm on episode
with Nicole
6.
Kidman and,
I'm on the season finale.
Ooh, it's great.
I mean, have you seen 6 yet?
Yeah.
So
I've seen it all.
I watched 5 when they opened up the violin case.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I had a weird suspicion that it might be relatable to violin case.
Oh, I had no idea.
I don't want to give a spoiler. I don't want to give a spoiler alert.
But I
was like, why aren't we
was
focusing on that one? Because remember how worked up he got?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of had this hunch that Hugh Grant was, the husband was the prime suspect in the opening. But it's so good. It's such a great.
Nicole Kidman can
Nicole
do
Kidman.
no wrong. She
There's
is an
something glamorous
outstanding
about
actress.
her. I don't know. She's
an outstanding actress.
She
I mean,
is.
go down the list. Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
She was really great in Big Little Lies.
Great in Thunder Days.
Eyes Wide Shut was outstanding.
Oh.
I mean, I literally could go down the list of her shows. I have so many. I mean, I'm a championship level binge watcher.
Yeah.
But if I had to tell you shows that you have to watch, Sons of Anarchy is my favorite show on television. Now, very violent. I'm a little dark, so
Nothing wrong with it.
I love it. But if you liked Sopranos,
I've seen Sopranos a long.
this makes it look like Child's Play.
Okay, it's a reference to that. That's right.
It is,
Yeah, that's
the acting is outstanding.
Really?
The other one of my favorites is The Hunters.
I've heard about that. I have
So
not.
good.
There's so much programming stuff.
I know, but people are running out, so I got to keep giving you some.
Yeah.
So then the other one that I absolutely have, Man in the High Castle, is phenomenal. Because like I said, I'm a little bit of a sci-fi history person. So it's what the world would look like if the Nazis and the Japanese had won.
Oh my gosh. I'll have to definitely
So
watch
good.
that.
The other one that I absolutely loved was The Vikings. Mm-hmm. So good.
Yeah.
Last Kingdom.
Have you seen The Kingdom with about the UFC fighters?
No.
This is sad, but the only actor I recognize name-wise is Joe Jonas. And you're going to laugh at me, but he's one of the
I'm proud
UFC
of you,
fighters.
Tony. Look at you.
Yeah. So,
What was your favorite Jonas Brothers song?
you know what? I was traumatized as a dad because I had to take my daughter, to the 3D movie, and I had to pay $20 to sit through that.
They were a big deal.
Oh, they were.
Did you have a van growing up? Did you get a van? Did you lean into the van life?
Yeah, I mean, I love van. I mean, the rock and roll bands in my area.
Oh, I said van.
Oh, van.
Did Tony Casillas drive a van when he got kids?
No.
God, that's unfortunate.
Escalade.
That's
Suburban. No, I've never gotten to the van thing. I had a buddy of mine, he used to call it the shaggin' wagon.
Oh, that's so funny. My dad was ridiculous growing up. My dad is literally the most ridiculous human you'll ever meet. And he had a Suburban that he had put this is, I swear to God, a true story. He had put, what are those loudspeakers that you take to a pep rally and you talk through it?
Oh, the megaphone?
Megaphone.
Yeah.
It's not the megaphone, but it's the electrical one that projects. If the teacher's trying to yell at you, it's rah, 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 but it's.
Oh, yeah.
My dad had installed it under the hood of the Suburban, and it's seventh grade. He's picking me up out front, and he literally had his CB radio, and he clicks it, and it's connected to the deal under his hood. Jane Slater, it's your father. Get to the car and stop talking to that boy. To the boy. That is my daughter. She's 13 years old.
That is funny.
I was mortified.
Why didn't I think of that?
My dad is literally an absurd human.
That is great.
Yeah, he really.
Props to your dad, man. That's pretty creative.
He loves thriving.
Instead
in
of getting
space.
a shotgun, just get the megaphone.
Oh no, he just likes to shame his daughters. It's
That's
pretty
great.
great. When I did get married, the guy asked for my hand in marriage, and my dad's like, "Are you sure?"
I forgot to ask you this. I'll ask you this. What's your dream? Your dream man?
Whew.
Real quick. I know this has been fun. I know we can go.
I think honestly, it's just a guy.
Is there such thing? I mean, I guess there is, but
yeah. I mean, I just honestly, I think I want him to be very thoughtful. Mm-hmm. I want him to be successful, but not so successful that his job is everything. Mm-hmm. I want him to be a person that wants to read, that wants to travel, that's interested and interesting. Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. Yeah. But just literally a guy that just is not stagnant. A guy that's the typical Dallas guy. There was a guy recently. It's all he talked about was his money, the wine that he was drinking, the restaurants he was going to. And I was like, I am so uninterested.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think anyone that's just passionate about life, that's interesting to me.
Well, I know you're passionate about what you do, and you're passionate about everything you do, and I also hear you're a Peloton person. So
yes,
I'm on it. So we'll have to.
I did not want to be a Peloton person. I didn't. I just felt like everyone was doing it, but just I am always 2 or 3 years behind everyone. I'm a late bloomer, but I was on Twitter late. I was on Instagram late, Facebook late. I'm Peloton was the big deal last year, and I literally got it 2 weeks ago, and I am obsessed.
Yeah.
There is this guy, Dennis with one N. Hide your wives.
Oh, are you talking about the instructor?
Oh, yeah.
Is he the guy with the long hair?
No, his name is Dennis with one N.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of...
But apparently Dennis with one N, Tony, was an instructor here in Dallas. So I've been posting funny videos. He smolders his eyes at you, and he was he plays this 80s ride, and he was and I want you here with me.
Oh, wow.
And so while you're riding,
that's okay.
You're trying to focus, but you're this is hilarious.
I may not take Kevin's class, but there's Jess King, there's Kendall Toole, there's a lot of different instructors.
I was all into Jess.
Alice Toussaint.
But just
not
like
the guy that's
she
gonna
came in with like this like cowboy hat last time and had like money, and then she's playing country while I'm spinning. Like I'm a big 80s, like 80s and EDM rides. That's where I'm at.
Well, there's an instructor for everyone, but Dennis, I don't think he's going to be mine. Hey,
he has hashtag Dennis Menaces. I just joined.
Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate this time. It's great to have you on the show. And as always, good luck to you. I'm sure everything. And oh, by the way, Merry Christmas, because this episode will be on December 23rd. There's no telling where you'll be. But anyway, I hope you have happy holidays. And thanks again for joining me.
You're awesome. Look, you've like gotten really good at this thing. This was fun.
You like my shirt, red shirt?
I love the red shirt. Look, I love Lincoln Riley, and I love.
Oh, I forgot. So
I love the
ask you this.
Sooners right now because of what's going on with Herman.
All right. So is Urban Meyer going to be the next head coach? You
well,
think
they
there's
already said it wasn't happening.
Oh, well. Crazy. You guys deserve
Texas,
better than that. You
I
guys are an
always say-
academic school. That's what my
Listen,
son says now.
I always say Texas is a lot like the Cowboys. Really high expectations. A lot of people get involved. There's a lot of chiefs, not enough. Can I even say that these days? A lot of cooks, not enough sous chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah. It's kind of sad you can't.
And so you've got to kind of be a politician and a coach. It's a hard job. So like Texas and Dallas, yeah.
Well, as long as you don't beat us next year. Hey, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
You're the best, Tony.